showcasing gardens and nature in the valley and beyond. This is Let's Grow There, a WKBN Plus exclusive. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome back to Let's Grow There. I'm your host, Laurel Stone, and I am so excited to say it is finally March, which means we can start talking about spring planting. I'm here with a special guest, and I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Dianna Elzer. My husband and I purchased Sutherin Greenhouse, about 9 years ago. And it was primarily a wholesale greenhouse when we took it over. And we've expanded our retail operations a lot more. And we've expanded into houseplants, succulents, cacti, as well as our spring annuals, vegetables, and hanging baskets.
Now, talking about spring annuals, we're starting to get to the point where daffodils are starting to poke up, maybe some tulips. What are people seeing pop up in their yards right now?
Oh, yeah, you'll have all the bulbs, the crocuses, grape hyacinth, tulips, daffodils, hyacinth. The hyacinth are all the really pretty smelly ones. And unfortunately, if you wanted to add those to your garden, you kind of have to plant those in the fall because they need that cold weather to get them to pop up.
So say I didn't have the chance to plant them in the fall, I was slacking, I missed the date, but I still want something pretty and that smells good in my yard. What can I do?
Well, you can go. We have plants. A lot of areas have the bulb plants now. And if they don't have them now, they'll have them in the next few weeks. A lot of times they're centered around Easter because Easter when a lot of the plants are used. The pansies are great. They will withstand a light freeze. If it gets down below 32, down to 28, sometimes down to 24, they'll be okay. They'll even be okay covered with snow for a short time. And they look happy. So pansies are always a good option.
Now, before you were talking to me a little bit about how temperature is important to get seeds kind of to start germinating, especially your bulb plants. So tell me about the process and what you as a greenhouse do and that people can do at home too to start kickstarting those bulbs to get them ready.
Okay, well, so for bulbs, what we do in the greenhouse, because we're not planting them in the ground, is we would plant them, put them out on the greenhouse tables, let them root, and then we would put them in the refrigerator. And then you put them in the refrigerator. I think it's 60 or 90 days that they have to be in there. And then we kind of just jockey them in and out so that they blossom during Easter when we want them.
Tell me a little bit about all the planning that goes into this, because some people, they just see flowers, they're like, oh, yep, there's flowers, I'm going to plant them, and that's the end of it. But that's really not it. It's a lot of foresight in gardening.
Yeah, you do. There's a lot of companion planting, so you want to kind of plan out what you want to plant and when. Like right now, you could start your seedlings, start them inside, get them growing, and then start hardening them off. It takes about 2 weeks to harden them off, where you start setting them outside in cold weather for 10 to 12 hours a day, and then you gradually increase it until you get to where you can leave them outside overnight for a couple days, and then they're finally ready to put in the ground.
Now, what else can we start planting now? Because I talked to you a little bit about this on the phone. So I have had unfortunate luck in my yard with chipmunks. Every year I buy bulbs for hyacinths, I plant them, and every single year chipmunks eat them, so I have to go to the store and buy a plant again. But this year, one of the things I bought is I brought it here today. So I have Lily of the Valley roots. So is this something that I can put in the ground now and hopefully have bloom soon?
You should be able to put them in the ground now because, I'm assuming that's not a bulb, that it's rootstock. And if it's rootstock, it'll go in there. Once it gets wet, it'll activate it. And then it should pull up because the lily of the valley are a little later. So you should be good.
Now, how much of this am I going to be watering? Because we still might get a little snow that might dissolve into the ground, but I know when you put things freshly in the ground, they need a lot of water. So how much of it is me doing it and how much is like snow and rain?
Well, it depends. As long as we have some form of precipitation and the ground doesn't start getting really dry, you should be good. If your ground starts getting dry, then you will want to check your bulbs or your rootstock and make sure you give it a drink.
Last season we talked about we had a really rainy spring and it hurt a lot of our crops. And
It
there's
did.
not a ton that we can really do about it. I mean, if you have a greenhouse, that's a solution. What I have raised garden beds in the backyard. I don't have like a tent or anything to put over them. So what would
Yeah.
you suggest in that case?
Well, in those instances, you could get some little plant stakes, put them in, and then get some plastic to cover it. Of course, you want clear and cover over it. You don't have to make it hermetically sealed, but that would help get the majority of the rain off your plants.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back to talk about spring planting and some of the preparation you can start doing now. Hello, and we are back. I'm Laurel Stone, joined today with Dianna Elzer from Sutherin Greenhouse, and we're talking about spring planting. Now, before you can get some stuff right in the ground, there is a couple things you have to take. Preparation is important for gardening, even if you're known as a chaos gardener, which I admittedly am, but we're working on that. So, Dianna, talk to me a little bit about the planning aspect that goes into it that people can start doing right now.
Okay, well, right now, if you have a garden bed or a raised garden bed, you can start putting some amendments into your soil. If you have compost, you can throw some compost in there, work it into the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. Anything, make sure you have any weeds that may be growing right now, pull them out before they get to the seed stage, and then just get everything ready. And then you'd want to start your seeds. Now, it's very cold. The ground temperature is pretty cold right now. So you'd probably want to start your seeds indoors. If you have a nice warm area, get some soil, get your seeds. Usually your package of seeds will give you planting instructions. They can go anywhere from 0 to a quarter inch depth all the way up to an inch into the soil. So read your seed packet, plant accordingly, keep it in a warm area with plenty of light. Don't let it dry out. And once it sprouts, gets a little, you don't want to put it out right as it sprouts. Let it get a little height to it and then harden it off for a couple weeks before you subject it to the cold temperatures.
A couple of weeks for hardening it off.
So you want, because you do it slowly. So you start out for a couple 10 to 12 hours a day, and you do that for several days. Then you increase it to 12 to 14, and then you'll go, the second week you want to go to 24 hours outside. Now, if we're going to have a cold snap that's really cold, then obviously you don't want to do that. You don't want to put it where it's going to be very windy because it'll dry it out and your plant won't be hardened, won't have the capacity to deal with that kind of weather right now. But yeah, hardening them off will help them greatly once you do plant them outside. You have your cold weather crops, your Brussels sprouts, your kale, lettuce, cabbage, carrots, beets, those sort of things. And you can start those now, and they don't mind soil that's going to be lower in temperature than your warm weather crops like your tomatoes and stuff.
Now, those cold weather crops, I always thought that like root crops like carrots and beets, you direct sow those right into the beds, don't you? Or do you start those inside and transplant them too?
You can. You can do either one. If you wanted to get a jump, because like right now, direct sowing outside, I don't know. I haven't gone out and tried to dig a hole, so I don't know how hard the ground is right now. So I always like to plant them inside first. That way okay, the seeds are good, they're sprouting, and my plant's got a leg up.
Now, I'm going to bring up one of my other issues to you. So, when you start your seedlings, I know it's important to keep them moist. So, what I would do is I would get one of the big planting trays with the little separators, put my dirt in, I would put my seeds in, and normally I'd cover it with like plastic wrap. And I always heard stick it on the top of your refrigerator just because warm, dry, my cats won't eat it there. So, that's what I always did. But one of my issues that I've encountered is the delicate balance of keeping things moist without them molding. So, how do we handle that?
Yeah, you do need airflow. So if you're covering it, unless they sell these domes that you can put over the top of your planting tray, which probably gives it a little more airflow than your plastic wrap is, because your plastic wrap's going to be close to the ground, and you're probably not going to have a lot of light on top of your refrigerator. So you are going to be very subject to mold.
Okay. So, what should the ideal setup look like so I can start that more accurately and give my plants a better chance this season?
So if you have like a heating pad or a warming pad, you can put them on there and put them down where they're still going to get light, because even though they're in the ground, you still want them to have light, because you never, I mean, some seeds will germinate 1 to 3 days. Some take 7 to 21. It all depends, but you want them to be able to see that light when they first pop up. Also, if you have it somewhere more centrally located, you can kind of keep an eye on them. If you don't have light, you can get a grow light and put the grow light on them. And that way they're right there visible, so they aren't out of sight, out of mind.
Now, one other thing that I've seen recently on social media, and again, sometimes social media is great, sometimes it's not, and sometimes you're like, can I trust it? Can I not? It's either good. Some tips have made my life just an amazing difference, and other times I'm like, I wasted so much time. So here's one question I have. I have seen people who they will start their seedlings inside and they'll put a little room fan on them that supposedly having the wind, the air, mimics the wind outside and makes them stronger. Is there any truth to that practice?
There is truth in part. So wind is a great for your houseplants, fiddle leaf figs for houseplants. Sometimes when they're first starting to grow, you need to strengthen the tree. So they recommend every time you go by it, you grab it and you kind of shake it back and forth, because you need to strengthen the trunk of the tree. So yeah, when we grow mums in the fall, the mums that are in the greenhouse are much more fragile than the ones that are grown outside in the field, because they don't have that external environment that toughens them up.
That's interesting. So now you talked about your figs a little bit. Can you grow figs in Ohio? Is that what's on our table right here?
Well, that's a Ficus lyrata. So
Okay,
that's a
look at it.
house plant. Although we do have, I didn't bring any today, we do have a fig tree that is hardy to zone 6. So you can grow figs outdoors. We also just got in some pomegranate trees. Those are not hardy to our zone, so you have to bring them inside when it gets cold. But I'm very excited about them. We also have banana trees. So there are some hardy banana trees that you can plant outside in the ground. They have a nice tropical look. They grow very rapidly. And at the end of the season, you cut them off 4 to 6 inches from the ground, and you mulch them heavily. And then come spring, they start popping back up, probably around mid-May, and they'll grow to 12, 15 feet in a season.
That's so cool. Growing bananas in Ohio. I know there's someone we interview regularly, and he has bananas in his yard. And because it's such a novelty thing, that's why we talk to him, because it's so cool. But just to think that anyone can grow bananas in their yard, like that's something that's kind of viewed as, exotic, you think, more to the southern U.S. But what else can we grow that's cool like that? And sidetracking a minute, when can you plant those trees? Can I go and buy a plant from you the tree from you tomorrow, plant it right away?
I would not plant it right away, because it's been in a greenhouse, and so you can't take it from a nice, warm, cozy environment and then stick it out when it's going to be 30 outside, because it's not going to be happy, and there's a good chance it may die. So you want to wait until probably after Mother's Day before you would put it in the ground. And then you still have to be on the lookout because Lord knows we've had late snow, bad weather pop up. So if something were to come around, you would want to put some protection on around it.
All right. Now, in terms of protection and other things we can do, what are we doing now to prepare? Are we getting our gloves, our tools? Because we can't quite dig into the dirt yet, but people can do some other things. So just give me a little checklist of things people should be doing right now.
You can plan out your garden, what you want to plant where. Look up the companion plants that you want to put around, like marigolds are a big one that everybody likes to put around to help keep the bugs away. Plot where they're going to go in your garden because, like your squash plants, they have no boundaries. They will go everywhere. But your tomato plants, they are going to go straight up, and they're going to need something to support them. So if you plan out what you want, how much of each product you want to harvest, and then get what you're going. If you're going to grow from seed, you want to look at your seed packet, find out when you need to start them. If you can, direct sow late once it gets a little warmer, or if you're better off starting them inside. Also, greenhouses, such as ours, you can buy a lot of vegetable plants where you buy them in flats and then you can just get them. You still want to harden them off and then pop them in the soil.
All right, thank you. This is very helpful. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Hello, and we are back. I'm Laurel Stone here with Dianna from Sutherin Greenhouse, and we have a little bit of a demonstration for you today. So I'm going to take our wide camera and show you our tables. So we have all kinds of plants. For me, right here, this is the hyacinth. I love it. It does not love me, specifically the chipmunks in my yard love it far too much. But we have some other beautiful plants around here too. So Dianna, I'm going to let you tell people kind of what we have.
Okay. Well, this is one of my favorite plants. It's not currently blooming, but it has a lovely little tag that will fool you because it looks like a gardenia. And these are a gardenia plant. They have very fragrant flowers. They are not hardy to our zone, but they're great plants. They love it when they're outside. These are the pansies.
Mm-hmm.
Pansies are wonderful. They don't like it once it starts getting too hot, but as long as they have a little shade, that'll keep them going throughout the summer. This is a bridal veil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a type of Tradescantia, and they are just great for a pop of color. And then we just brought a sample of one of our combination hanging baskets that is just growing. As a matter of fact, he's just about to be cut back for the first time before we trim him away. And then I did bring a little pot of dirt,
Mm-hmm.
a packet of seeds, and this is actually catnip.
Oh, I have catnip in my yard. It grows best between the cracks of my sidewalk. I've transplanted it in my garden bed, and it does okay there, but it just keeps coming up in my sidewalk. I can't grow it from seeds, though. So honestly, this is good. I've tried from my own seeds, from the catnip plant I've grown in my own packet, and I get a little start. I always get a little sprout for it. But then it just kind of gets sad, and it falls over and dies. Like, sprouting, it's not my problem. It's getting it hardy. And I've always had it in my house. I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. So is it hard to grow?
So sprouting from seed, catmint, these seeds, they say they only want to be 0 to 1/4 inch in depth. So what we do is we sprinkle the seeds on the moist soil, and then this is vermiculite. So we take the vermiculite and we just put it over the top. That way the seeds can still see a little bit of sky through there, but they're protected from any birds that want to come and poke through. And then you just set that in a warm spot and keep it moist, and before you know it, they'll perk up. So when you were doing them from seed, were you doing it outside? Or?
I was doing them inside. So I have just my little pot. I would shake some seeds. I think Honestly, I don't think I put them in too deep, I just kind of, because they're really small seeds. So for people who
Yes.
here aren't see them, it's the type of seeds that you just kind of lick your finger, stick it in the packet, and it would have to stick there. You're not
Mm-hmm.
very precisely measuring. So that's kind of what I did. I would do a light scattering, and then I just kind of smear them around, and they'd poke up. They were really, really skinny to start too. And they'd grow maybe half an inch, and then they just wilt, and then they die.
And maybe they're not getting enough light.
Okay. That could be it, because I don't
So
have a ton of natural light in my
yeah,
house.
so if you want to try it again, make sure you have a grow light on them because when they're really skinny, they're reaching and they're stretching for some light.
That makes sense. That makes a
So,
lot of sense. Now, what else are people doing? What are we planting? What seeds are we starting?
well, I know in the greenhouse we have what we call patio tomatoes. It's a husky red variety that you can keep in the pot. So they're already well, we already have some tomatoes that we've harvested off some of the plants, but those were planted earlier. But so by the time mid-May comes around, they're going to be full of tomatoes, may even have some red ones. So we've started the tomatoes. We have some pepper plants going already.
Is now too early to get them started in the house? Because there is really a pinnacle of perfect time that I missed it last year. I started my seeds too early. And then I tried to harden them off. I had them on my porch for a while. But then because we had such a rainy spring, I couldn't get them in the ground. And then when I eventually got them in the ground, again, I blame the rain. I had slugs. So my garden was really hurt last year. But for people who do want to start and get that jump, is the beginning of March too early to start your indoor, or are we getting ready right now?
Yeah, it depends. So as we were talking about, there are some cold season crops that you can start now. And there are also like lettuce. You can get lettuce started now, and you can do them in rotations because lettuce, you just cut it off as you want to harvest it. But a lot of times it will grow too fast. So if you start some now and then say in a month, start another batch, you'll have lettuce the whole time.
Now, one of my concerns is if I get started too early, is it worth being concerned, I suppose, that the plant itself, because you have the little starter trays and they're pretty small, are we worried about them getting root bound before they have a chance to go in the ground?
So about how deep is your starter tray?
A couple inches or so, probably.
So so when we plant from seed, we'll plant them, and as soon as they pop up and they're maybe inch and a half tall, we'll take them out and we'll separate the little seedlings and we'll put them into larger pots. So perhaps that's something that you could look at doing is take your seedlings apart once they're taller. And that way too, because you don't want a bunch of them clumped together. And when you water seeds, they tend to kind of float all to the same spot. So that helps out a lot if you they also have those little jiffy pots. So if you take it, separate, and put them in the little jiffy pots, then when your time is ready, you can just pop the whole pot in the garden.
Now, when we're talking about moving your plants, because I've tried that method too. So I've had my little seed starters. I try to be gentle. I think I'm gentle. Sometimes I don't even wear the gloves because I'm like, oh, you don't have the same dexterity with them. So how can you successfully transplant from your seed starter to a miniature pot to the ground? Because sometimes that middle step is where I'll lose them.
So you lose them from transferring them from the
From my
seed
little,
tray.
yeah, from my seed tray to like a middle container before it's ready to go in the ground.
So because it's going into a much larger pot with a lot more soil, you do want to watch to make sure you don't overwater them because if the soil, it's going to have a lot more soil mass and it's going to take it longer to use up the water it needs from that pot. So you don't want to overwater it. Of course, you don't want to underwater. And and plenty of light. It wants plenty of light.
It seems like watering is the most complex part of all of this. We keep coming back to watering. So how do people know? Because a lot of times, if you go out to water your garden, you get your hose and you just kind of spritz it all down. But each plant has its own particular need. So how do people go about that?
Well, you don't want to water at night because you're going to make your plants more susceptible to fungal growth. And when you water, you want to avoid kind of just spraying because you want your soil, you want to water it deeply so that the roots have to grow deep. If you water shallow, then the roots are going to stay shallow and it's going to give you an unsteady plant. So you water it deeply and then let it dry out before you water it again. You may not need to water it every day. You're just going to have to check the soil. And yes, some plants require less water than others. So that's another thing when you start planting your garden, you want to look at the watering habits of each plant and plant accordingly so that you don't have something that doesn't like to be too soggy right next to something that requires a lot of water because nothing good can come of that.
Now, when you say water deeply, what you said about the roots, I've never heard that before. That's really cool. My mother always used to say, give them a big drink, which is
Yes.
like as humans, if we take like a little gulp, we might not necessarily be satiated. But for plants, so what you're telling people is we might think it's too much if we're just glugging it on, but explain the process of watering deeply, like what it means.
So overwatering doesn't necessarily mean giving it too much water at one time. Overwatering can be giving it a bunch of small sips every day. And so then the roots, which are down in the soil, aren't getting where the water is, so they're trying to navigate to where the water is, but it's tough. So in the meantime, the roots that are higher up are dying because they have too much. They have more water than they can use. So if you take a plant, any plant in the greenhouse, and you water it thoroughly, and then you wait. Don't water it again until, depending on the variety, but generally speaking, until like 1 to 2 inches down in the soil feels, it doesn't feel moist until you get down that far.
That's helpful. Thank you. Now, as someone who works in the greenhouse, I'm sure you diagnose a lot of other problems that people have. So, what are the most common problems you see, and how can people fix them?
So probably the biggest problem is not having adequate lighting for the type of plant that they have. You'd think, oh, this is plenty of light, but to your plant, it's not enough, or it could be too much. When people say, oh yeah, I have lots of light, it's hard for me to judge because what you think is a lot of light might not, because we're coming from a greenhouse that's all glass, so any bit of light that's out there, our plants are getting. So to go from that to indoors into your home, you want to, short of buying a light meter, I've heard it explained like how much sky can your plants see. So you just want to make sure they're getting adequate light.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. I'm sure we'll have you back again. This
love
has
that.
been a segment talking all about early spring gardening. We'll see you next time.